So, to put it simply, I was a bit of a menace as a kid. I used to steal from stores and family, curse, and throw things at random people walking down the street. I started smoking at 12 and didn't care about anyone except my friends. They were my real family, or so I thought, and the 5 of us caused trouble nearly every single day. My parents, who later admitted they should have been firmer with discipline, weren't entirely to blame. I was just a confused, angry kid. I used to think doing all that made me look cool. I can't really describe the rush I felt making grown adults afraid of me. It made me feel powerful, and power was something I craved. I could go on and on about the stuff I did, but the truth is, I was in a really dark headspace. I've tried to make amends where I could, but you're not here for the guilt trip, you're here for the revenge. So, long story short, when I turned 16, my parents had enough. Despite all my tantrums, screaming, and even some aggressive outbursts toward my dad, they sent me to what they called a school for troubled youth. I say school, but it was really more of a military-style boot camp. It focused on discipline in the most intense way, with a bit of reading and math thrown in. Without diving too deep, that place changed me. When I first got there, I was angry, arrogant, and borderline out of control. But the men who ran that place broke me down. I was there for just over a year, no phone, no visits, no outside world, just the camp and the counselors. By the end of my second summer, I was a different person. I had fought, I had yelled, I had been pushed to my limit more times than I can count, but eventually, I got it. Those men showed me that real strength doesn't come from intimidation or rage. It comes from self-respect and owning your actions. One counselor in particular, Jay, stood out. At first, I hated him for making me feel small, but in the end, he became like a second father to me. He was the one who said I was ready to return home. Anyway, enough backstory. Let's get to the real story. When I returned home, I had changed from a disrespectful, angry kid to a somewhat civilized young man, ready to take on my last year of high school. I was nervous about going back, since I'd gotten used to the structured lifestyle of the disciplinary school, but I was also excited. I missed my friends and hoped they'd still accept me, even though I hadn't spoken to any of them in over a year. To my relief, they welcomed me back with open arms. One of my closest friends had moved to another state while I was away, but the other 3 were thrilled to see me. Over the next few weeks, I settled in. I didn't hang out with them much outside of school because my parents were still testing how much I'd really changed. They set rules around when I could go out, how long I could stay out, and where I was allowed to go. I was determined to prove I wasn't the same kid who had made their lives so difficult, so I followed every rule. That meant I mostly talked to my friends during school hours. This all matters because of what happened next. I had joined the school football team, all 3 of my friends were on it too, and one evening after practice, the whole team was in the gym. We were sweaty, tired, but feeling good. I was laughing and chatting with my 3 best friends, so I didn't notice right away that we were the last ones left in the gym. That's when the conversation took a turn. One of my friends, let's call him F1, started talking about a college party they were planning to crash. Apparently, they'd been doing that for a while, since it was an easy way to meet new people and get access to things high schoolers usually can't. I was hesitant, mostly because I knew my parents wouldn't be thrilled about me going to something like that. But then F1 started talking about a girl he was planning to invite. She went to our school, and while I knew of her, I didn't think they were close. He told us he'd been trying to get with her for a while, but she'd always made excuses. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. I jokingly asked, "What makes you think she'll say yes this time?" He looked me straight in the eye and said, completely casually, "I'll just make sure she loosens up a bit. Won't be a problem." At first, I awkwardly laughed, thinking it was some messed up joke, but they weren't laughing with me. When I asked if he was serious, F1 said he was tired of the girl's mind games and believed she was just leading him on. He claimed the pills would just make things easier. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I made an excuse to leave, and practically rushed home. I honestly think I ran a few stop signs, but I was so rattled I can't even remember. That night, I tried to convince myself it was just some twisted joke they didn't mean. A few days went by. The locker room conversation faded in my mind, but they wouldn't stop talking about the party. They kept pushing me to sneak out and join them. When I told them I wasn't going, mainly because of my parents, they mocked me for it. I brushed it off. And then, things got real. One evening after practice, we were again the last ones in the locker room. F1 had been talking about the party nonstop. Then he started digging through his gym bag and said, "Check this out." He tossed F2 a small bag of pink pills. My blood ran cold. My mind was racing, screaming, "This is real. This is serious." This is happening. It's hard to explain what I felt when F1 started casually describing his plan to invite that same girl to the party, put something in her drink, and take her to one of the bedrooms. Like it was nothing. I felt physically sick. I genuinely thought I was going to throw up on the spot as they all talked about how fun the night was going to be, right after outlining something incredibly disturbing. I ran out of there. Again. Later that night, I did throw up, just thinking about what I had heard. These guys had been my closest friends for 15 years. I thought of them as family. I thought I knew them better than anyone, but after just 1 year apart, this is what they'd become? I actually broke down crying that night, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. What I am ashamed of is how long it took me to get a grip and do something about it. I knew I should have told someone, but in a messed up way, my loyalty was still confused. Please don't judge me too harshly. I know now what I should have done. But at 17, with my oldest friends involved, I felt torn. I didn't want them to ruin their lives, but I also couldn't let this go. So instead of going to an adult like I should have, I made a different decision. I was going to stop it myself. So I went to F1 and told him not to go through with what he was planning. I told him it was wrong, dangerous, and could ruin both his life and the life of the girl involved. He didn't even flinch. He got right in my face and said the school I went to had turned me soft. That he hated how much I'd changed, and he and the others, F2 and F3, had been trying to fix me. He even admitted they'd been talking behind my back, and then said something that shook me to my core. He said they were going to let me have a turn after he was done with the girl, just to show me what I was missing out on, and then he said something I'll never forget. Word for word, I'm doing her a favor. She's never been with anyone. After this party, your mom won't be the only one who's not a stranger to it. That's when I snapped. I punched him. We fought, and both of us ended up suspended for fighting. I was in disbelief, furious. My best friend, someone I'd grown up with, had just told me something horrifying, and had the nerve to call me weak for not wanting to be part of it. I felt disgusted, completely sick inside. And in that moment, I knew, I was done with him. My parents were upset that I got suspended so soon after coming back home. My mom cried. My dad yelled. But I just sat there quietly. I know now that I should have told them everything. But after what F1 said, some stubborn, twisted part of me decided I was going to deal with it myself. And that brings us to the revenge. After a weekend of being grounded, I returned to school, and went straight to F1. He looked about as rough as I did, with a black eye from where I'd hit him. F2 and F3 were standing with him, and they all gave me cold stares as I walked up. Then I did something that made my stomach turn. I apologized. I told him I was sorry for hitting him. That he was right, I had changed. And I hated it. I said I wanted to go back to being the old me again, and to my surprise, they bought it. F1 even hugged me, and I sealed the deal by saying I'd come to the party. Now came my dumb teenage plan. First, I started recording them anytime we were alone. I wanted proof, everything they said about the party, and what they were planning. I knew if I didn't get something concrete, it would be just my word against theirs. After a few days, I had more than enough. But I wasn't finished. No, I had a plan, and I was determined to see it through. So the next thing I did was find the girl and pull her aside. I told her everything. She was angry, scared, and totally shocked. I asked her, stupidly, not to go to the police or tell anyone just yet. Looking back, that was a terrible idea, but for some reason, she trusted me. I had a plan, a reckless one, but I was convinced it would teach them a lesson. I told her to say yes to F1's invitation, but not to actually go. Just stay home, stay safe, and let the night play out. Later that day, F1 was all smiles, bragging that everything was going according to plan. I sat there, phone in my pocket, recording every word. Then the night of the party came. I was grounded, but I snuck out anyway. And honestly, I didn't feel like some hero. I wasn't filled with pride or certainty. I kept second-guessing myself. These guys had been like brothers to me since childhood, and now they were unrecognizable. What messed me up even more was the thought that I could have ended up just like them if my parents hadn't sent me away. It was a weird, heavy realization to have in the middle of a noisy frat party, but it hit me hard. As the night went on, F1 started getting annoyed that the girl hadn't shown up. I kept close, watching him. I didn't want him turning his attention to anyone else. I watched all of them closely as they drank through the night. I kept it cool, sipping water out of a beer can so I wouldn't stand out. By midnight, they were heavily intoxicated. The crowd was thinning, and a few people had already passed out. I knew by that point the girl was safe, and no one was in immediate danger. Then I made my move. While the three of them were distracted with a drinking game, I checked F1's bag and found what I expected, a pouch with those same pink pills. What I did next, I'm not proud of, but here it is. I made sure they had nothing harmful in their drinks, but I gave them each one of their own pills back. I didn't alter or spike anything, just gave them the drinks they had brought for others. They passed out soon after, along with a few other partygoers who had just overdone it. Then, I grabbed a black marker, wrote a very clear message on each of their foreheads, and snapped a few pictures. I uploaded the photos to our school's Facebook page. It was immature, risky, and not well thought out, but I knew that in our small town, word would spread before the photos got taken down. And that was the point. Next came the recordings. When I got home, my parents were furious about me sneaking out, but everything stopped the moment I told them what had really been going on. They were shocked, and honestly, a bit skeptical, until I played the recordings from my phone. Once they heard the voices, the comments, the plans, their anger shifted to something closer to disbelief and concern. My dad didn't say much on the way to the police station, just lectured me about how I should have come to him from the start, and that what I'd done at the party had crossed a line. Maybe he was right, but at the time, it felt like the only way to protect someone who could have been seriously hurt. By then, my phone was already blowing up. People were commenting on the photos from the party, asking questions, sharing opinions. Some found it funny, others were seriously concerned. And that was the goal. I wanted people to finally see these guys for who they really were. I didn't want them to be able to hide behind fake smiles anymore. Being at the police station was nerve-wracking. Even then, I kept questioning whether I had made the right call. But deep down, I knew they had made their own choices, and I had made mine in response. Eventually, the recordings were enough to open an investigation. Since the girl involved had been named, her parents were outraged. They pressed charges against all three of my former friends. I wasn't off the hook, though. I admitted to what I did at the party, using something I shouldn't have and writing on them while they were unconscious. That got me into trouble too. I was charged with misuse of a substance and a form of personal misconduct, but thankfully, I didn't face jail time. I was sentenced to a hefty amount of community service instead. As for the others, all three were charged for conspiracy to commit an offense, but only F1 ended up serving time. He had obtained the substances and was the only one who openly admitted to what he had planned. F2 and F3 were placed on probation and also received community service. But socially, they were done. No one in town looked at them the same again. I was prepared for backlash, ready for some kind of confrontation, but surprisingly, that never happened. I think seeing F1 face real consequences for his actions made something click for the other two. They seemed to straighten out after that. Even without their football scholarships, since both were removed from the team, they managed to get into college. They never approached me again, which honestly surprised me, but by then, I had moved on. As far as I was concerned, those friendships had ended long before everything happened. By the time I moved away for college, it felt like I'd closed that chapter for good. I'm in my final year now, and I still think about them sometimes. I wonder if, had my parents not sent me to that school, I might have followed the same path. And yet, I do miss them occasionally, but I know it's the memory of who they used to be that I miss, not the people they became. I've thanked my parents many times for making that difficult decision, and I even told Jay, the counselor who helped turn my life around, what happened. He gave me a nod of approval when I finally felt ready to open up about it. As for F1, I don't know what life will look like for him after he gets out, but a part of me genuinely hopes he's learned something and can rebuild in a better way, just like I did. Funny enough, Jay called me a few days ago to check in, and I told him this whole story.